I'm going to hit record. Good morning. This is the Northern Virginia Regional LHRC February 15th meeting, and our Vice Chair, Renee Valdez, is going to be our acting chair today. So Renee, I will let you call the meeting to order, and I'll pull the agenda up as you're doing that.
Okay, the meeting is called to order at 8:34 a.m. And are you going to take roll call?
Yes, I will. Thank you. So Renee.
Here.
Michael.
Here.
Ed.
Here.
Perfect. And Amanda and Farzana are absent. So as we go through votes, and I'll roll call the vote, I'll call each of you to discern your yay or nay for whatever motive. Motion. Oh my gosh, brain fart. Motion is on the table. All right, very good. Thank you. Next item, Renee.
All right. Has everybody had a chance to see the agenda? And if so, I would like a motion to approve.
Motion to approve.
Okay.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Ed. Renee, are you in agreement?
I agree.
Michael?
Agreed.
Ed?
Agreed.
Very good. Motion passes. Thank you.
All right, moving on to the minutes. If everyone has had a chance to review, if there are no discussion questions, I would ask for a motion to approve.
I make a motion that we approve the minutes.
Thank you,
Second.
Ed. Thank you, Michael. Renee, are you in agreement with that motion?
I agree.
Michael?
Yes.
Ed?
Agreed.
Perfect. Thank you. No one in the waiting room that I know of is interested in public comment, or at least they did not express that when I asked who they were. But of course, members of the committee also had the opportunity to make public comments as well. So is there anyone present wishing to make a public comment?
No.
Perfect. We'll leave it open in the event that someone else wants to later on. Chair announcements.
No announcements for the vice chair.
Very good. So under advocate report, it has been discussed ways that we can share pertinent and relevant information with the LHRC. So moving forward, we are going to start to do kind of this little table. You guys can see the table?
Yes.
So just to share some general information specific to our region. And so one of the things that's easy to be able to tell you is about the types of reports that we get in the region and how many. So this is for the fourth quarter of 2021. So it's October 1st through the end of December. And so we have the different types of reports that we get. Remember that we have two types of human rights reports. They're abuse, neglect, exploitation, and then there's complaint reports. And the different subcategories we have are IDDD and substance abuse and mental health providers. Really, it's just the catch-all for everything else. They're divided into two groups. We have providers and we have CSBs. So just a little bit of a reference point that the abuse, neglect, exploitation reports totaled for that last quarter. There are 113 provider A&E reports, IDDD, only 2 complaints. Substance abuse, neglect, there were 147. Now that also includes children's residential. They do tend to submit a lot of reports, and that was 260. So for the region, for the provider reports, we had 276 reports. CSB reports, because they're a little bit smaller when you really look at the big picture. So IDDD is 8, SA is 8 for a total of 16. And then substance abuse mental health complaints were 5 for a total of 21 in the region. And that brings our grand total to 297 reports that Region 2 staff touched upon, looked at, facilitated in the last quarter of 2021. Of all of those reports, 38 were substantiated. When a report is substantiated, that means that the provider recognizes that there was abuse, neglect, exploitation, or that the human rights complaint was valid, and that results in licensing citation. That does not also include reports that we disagree with the provider and we put forth citation recommendations when we feel that there was a violation. So this is just a table to reflect what some of the numbers are in the region for the last quarter. So we'll be trying to present similar information on a regular basis. Any questions on the table?
Yeah, I have
No.
one quick question, and about this. How do these numbers, this was just for the past quarter, October through December.
Correct.
Just wondering, so I don't have a lot of history on this, but how do these numbers shape up in terms of number of reports, number of complaints, and also substantiations?
Well, to be fair, this is the first time we've really kind of run reports and summarize this information. I could go back and do the other quarters. I didn't because I wanted to have, moving forward focus on quarterly reports, but I could go back and see how they compare. Lena can agree or disagree, but I don't find that the last quarter was any busier or less busy, more busy than any other quarter. I think these are probably pretty similar standard numbers. We'll certainly see in the first quarter of 2022 what that looks like. But in general, I think that these are pretty commensurate with what we normally see.
Well,
I would
Go ahead, Lena.
I would say that it's a little busier because we are now all using a new system, a new online system called Connect, where this kind of data collection will be easier and varied, and it's a lot more work, quite honestly, to process one report now as opposed to before.
Well, and following up on that, it's a lot of work. And if you look at the numbers of substantiated, it's a small percentage. I think it's like, let's put it the other way, 78% were not substantiated. So looks like a lot of reports and complaints. I can't say they're frivolous, but I'm just saying they did not result in any kind of a finding. I'm just wondering if people are submitting reports and complaints which are not well founded or grounded in the beginning from the start.
That's a good comment, Ed, because maybe what many of them do, even though they may not have findings, is they will have corrective action associated with them. So that might be a category we look for in the future.
Well, corrective action and substantiated are not under the same blanket.
Correct. You
Okay.
you cannot be substantiated and still recognize that maybe some corrective action is needed.
And what happens when it's substantiating?
Once it's substantiated, then you don't have any choice but to develop some corrective action, because you receive it. We recommend that the Office of Licensing send you a corrective action plan, and we provide them with the details for that.
Okay, but you also said sometimes there's recommended corrective action without going forward to substantiated category. Is that correct?
We do that, but sometimes, or a lot of times, providers will initiate that themselves.
Mm-hmm.
True.
Okay. Oh, you mean initiate corrective behavior?
How do they do that? They indicate in their report, and we have to review. We have to review verifications of that corrective action if it's substantiated. We don't always verify corrective actions for those that are not substantiated, but we do frequently.
This is an interesting chart, though. Going forward, if we had more of them, then you have a blueprint of what's happening. And also, it looks to me like a lot of these reports, and especially the A&E reports, maybe don't have a lot of merit from the start. I could be wrong. I don't know.
Well, the one other piece with it is we are trying to become more consistent with other regions.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a good thing, I feel.
You see this, so you have these kinds of reports from other districts?
And that's happening, right?
Yeah, I don't know that it's this exact table. Every region is sort of reporting out how they feel their region wants the information. This is just how I summarized it. It's not necessarily in this exact format.
Okay, it's an interesting format. I think it tells a lot, but it would be interesting also to compare it. How do they measure it, and how similar or how different is it? Is there a lot of cooperation between the districts?
There can be. I mean, I can easily run those reports as well, but because every region is really very and oddly unique. Region 2 is small but very dense in comparison to other regions, which are very spread out. Significant amount of rural providers that are very far distances from other providers. So it's hard to, it's valid to compare, but also taking into account the variety of the regions and what each region looks like. We are an anomaly in Northern Virginia because of the number of behavior plans that we review. So just to give you a perspective, we review just over 55, 56, so just under 60 behavior plans in this region as a constant. Our numbers hover between 50 and 60 behavior plans, either with restraints or restrictions, right? In other regions, I think the most that they have is between 5 and 10. So,
Wow.
right.
They have many fewer available BCBAs in other regions. So they're using doctors as the medical professional in a lot of the other regions.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah, it is quite different.
Well, how many providers do we have approximately in our region? How many CSBs, and each of those providers serving approximately how many clients? We have 144 providers serving 5,000 clients. Same with the CSBs, which are higher numbers. Ballpark.
I don't
It's
know
a
that I
lot.
can give you I don't know that I can give you a client count, and I don't know that I have a current number of providers. It's several hundred, obviously, providers that we have in the region. There's only 5 CSBs. That's a reliable number.
But they're a large population.
Yeah.
But the population for CSB is huge. My point is that these numbers are very small if you look at it in the context of the number of providers and the number of people served. 38 is really very, very 0.0001%. So
And that's
somebody's doing a good job there.
Yeah. Well, and remember that investigations are looking for preponderance of the evidence that abuse by the definition of abuse and neglect by the definition of the in our regulations was met. And so it's that standard preponderance of the evidence. It's not saying that the event didn't happen. It's saying, did the event was the event a result of abuse or neglect or exploitation? And so you have to sort of look at it through that caveat. I will say that for all 297 reports in the region, I read every single one. So I know every report that comes to the region. That's my job. Lena looks at all 115. The 161 is split between Jen Anglin and myself. So everyone lays eyes on these reports, whether it's initial report of what happened, and then the findings. We review the findings of the provider. And as I said, we either agree or disagree with the findings. And there are occasions where we do disagree and offer up our own citation recommendations based on that disagreement. So we're not afraid to do that.
Understood.
A very good snapshot of what's going on. That's just in one quarter. I find this to be very helpful.
Well, good. Well, it was a suggestion for really all of the LHRCs and the advocates to have this information, so you know the scope and breadth of our jobs that we do. And like, again, open to suggestions about different ways or different information you might need. I certainly can look at some of the information that the other managers are presenting and see if there's some level of comparison, even if it's just the total numbers that I can do. That's something to talk about, and I'll look at that. So very good, thank you. I'm going to stop sharing this and I'm going to go back to the agenda. I do also want to say in terms of my report, so we just had our first variance in Region 2, so we only have one. And variances are when a provider says, hey, I can't do this thing in the regulation. If I'm compliant, it messes up how I'm going to do my business to ensure the protections of individuals, so I have to do something different. And when a provider says, I want a variance to that regulation, there's a prescribed and kind of lengthy process that they have to go through. One of the things they have to be able to say is what they're going to do instead. You can't just not do a part of the regulations. You have to offer up what you're going to do instead. You have to show that you've made changes in your policy to reflect that. You come before the LHRC initially, the initial application comes before the LHRC. Your governing body has to agree that this variance is necessary. Once the LHRC kind of blesses it, it goes to the SHRC. It sits out in public record for a month. Then it goes back to the SHRC who makes the final determination. So it's a several month-long process. Not many providers have done it, but we do have one in the region as of right now. So one variance in Region 2. As you know, obviously we're virtual right now, and that only is going to last as long as the state of emergency is in existence, and that was extended to February 22nd. So after that, our next meetings would be scheduled to be in person, unless of course the state of emergency continues to be extended. Sometimes it feels very short notice, to which I apologize in terms of that it's not going to be in person. But as of right now, the March meeting is anticipated to be in person. Though I will say that I don't really have anything on the March agenda right now. And we have 11 people that we're looking at today, that it's a very heavily loaded agenda. So you guys, and we'll talk about as we get through those individuals, we can spread them out over a couple of meetings. But as of right now, unless something comes up, we are likely to be able to cancel the March meeting and would keep the April meeting. And we'll talk about how to spread out all 11 of these clients over 2 or 3 meetings. But as of right now, future meetings are expected to be in person. So training, I do want to talk about. This region has talked for a while about doing a regional LHRC training once or twice a year. So apparently it's a good idea because other regions are going to do it too. So now it's coming down from the training and development coordinator that we're going to be offering quarterly trainings to LHRC members. There is some discussion that these are going to be mandatory trainings for you guys. I don't know what that means in terms of, can we record it and you view it later? I honestly don't know. And hopefully I'll have more information about that. So there will be a March training date, and it will be virtual to my knowledge. So there will be a March training date that we'll be providing. And as I said, I really don't know the expectation of it is mandatory if we can record it and you can view it later. But I believe the March one is going to be a mock trial. And I think that that's very fascinating to be able to watch that. I did not do the last mock trial. Lena went to it and she was a part of it. And I heard it was a very good experience. So just think about that. And hopefully I'll have some dates and information that will come out for March. I'm going to push it to the end of March. So we have the opportunity to work our schedules. So that is all my advocate report. I have no other old business. And we can start on this one, though I do want to, before we go in, I'm going to pause myself out and see if I can reach Shannon because she was first on the agenda. Oh my gosh, everything I touched today is not working right. So there's no old business that anyone remembers, correct?
No business.
All right, perfect. So let me hit mute. I'm going to see if I can reach Shannon, then I'll have us read into closed session. So let me do that first.
the voice mailbox of Shannon Bennett. I will be on extended telework. Please email me with any and all questions or concerns at Shannon, SHANN.Bennett, Loudon, LOU. Again, I will be out on extended telework. Please forward any and all concerns to me via email. Thank you so much. Have a great day. Record your message.
Oh, am I off? I'm still on. I'm not on mute, am I? All right, well, I sent her an email and so hopefully she'll respond. In the meantime, I'm going to pull up the screen for us to be read into closed session. And can someone read that for Renee? And then Renee can make a motion. A second, we'll roll call.
I can read it.
Thanks, Ed.
Whereas the Northern Virginia Regional and Local Human Rights Committee desires to discuss in closed session client-related matters, and whereas pursuant to VA Code 2.1.344A, paragraph 15, for the protection of the privacy of individuals and their records and personal matters not related to public business, such discussion may occur in closed session. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Northern Virginia Regional Local Human Rights Committee does hereby authorize discussions of the aforestated matters in closed session.
Very good. Can I have a second?
Second,
Thanks, Michael. Renee, are you in agreement?
I agree.
Michael?
agree.
Ed? Can you say that again, Ed?
Yes, I agree. Sorry.
Perfect. I'm going to pause the recording and we'll bring in our first individual. Can someone read us out of closed session?
I'll do it. Whereas
Thanks.
the Northern Virginia Regional Local Human Rights Committee has this day adjourned closed session in accordance with a formal vote of the committee and in accordance with the provisions of the Virginia Freedom of Information Act. And whereas the Freedom of Information Act requires certification that such closed session was conducted in conformity with the law. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Northern Virginia Regional Local Human Rights Committee does hereby certify that to the best of their knowledge, only matters lawfully exempted from open media requirements and only such matters for the protection of the privacy of the individuals and their records in personal matters not related to public business were heard, discussed, or considered.
Can I have a second?
I
Second,
Thank you, Renee and Michael. Renee, are you in agreement with that motion?
I agree.
Michael?
agreed.
Ed?
Agreed.
Very good. So I'm gonna read you the recommendations that I'm gonna summarize the recommendations from the closed session, and then similarly, I'll need a recommendation, a second, and roll call vote. Individual number 1 was recommended to return May 17th. Individual number 2 was a no-show. Individual number 3 recommended to return April 19th. Individual number 4, the restraint for behavioral purposes is going to be changed for protective purposes. Therefore, no further LHRC follow-up is required. Individual number 5 is May 17th. Individual number 6 is May 17th. Individual number 7 is April 19th. Individual number 8 is April 19th. Individual number 9 is April 19th. Individual number 10 is May 17th. Individual 11 is September 20th, 2022. Can I have a motion for the recommendations?
The motion that we approve your recommendations.
Very good. Can I have a
Second.
second? Thank you, Michael. Renee, are you in agreement with those recommendations of the motion?
I agree.
Michael?
Agreed.
Ed?
Agreed.
Very good. Let me close this and go back to the agenda. If I can find it. So the next meeting is scheduled for March 15th. And as I indicated, I do not currently have any items on that agenda. And if there was any review that did come in, it would be easily pushed to the April. So as of right now, it is likely that that meeting will be canceled. I can't imagine why we would have to have it. But just keep it on your calendars as an in-person meeting. And hopefully by March 1st, I'll put that on our calendar that if we have no agenda items, then, well, actually, what's the deadline? I do it by the agenda deadline. The deadline is the 4th. So if I have no agenda, no items received by the 4th, then we will cancel the meeting. So tentatively keep it on as an in-person meeting at the Merrifield Center.
Okay.
Madam Chair, if all the business of the LHRC has been conducted per the agenda, you may call the meeting closed.
This has been an awesome meeting, and I adjourned the meeting at 11:34 a.m.
I'm going to hit stop recording.